Cool.
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back for another season and episode of the Damn Podcast. I am your host, Angie Machado. Joined with me is our beat writer, Jake Hedberg, and special contributor, Ty Boice. Guys, I just did some quick math. This is the start of season 10 of the Damn Podcast. Wow. So what started as a brainstorming with Brandon Sprague and I now is 10 seasons in the making. So this is kind of an awesome way to kick off the show. Fall camp starts a week from today. Best time of the year if you're a Beaver fan or a college football fan. So football is almost back. I think everyone needs some football in their life. Today, we are going to really go do a deep dive. We're going to look at the roster overview and some of the changes there. We're going to talk defense. We're going to talk offense, expectations, and we have a ton of mailbag questions from our members of Beaver Blitz in the Lodge. So if you have any other questions and you're watching us live on YouTube, make sure to drop those in the comments. We'll try to get to those. But other than that, we have so much to get to, guys. Are either of you guys super excited for football?
Oh, I'm stoked. Can't wait.
Yeah, I can take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it. Yeah.
No, this is the toughest time of year just because there's other than recruiting news, you're like just sitting, waiting, you know?
Yeah. And I think, as longtime Beaver fans, hope springs eternal for the fall. So It's always that time of year where, you could look at that pocket schedule and be like, wow, we could go 12-0 or, oh shoot, we could, these games are, I just think there's uncertainty this year, a whole new roster, a whole new coaching staff, a new offensive scheme. Defense, I think, is the one variable it's really staying constant. So I think we all expect defense to have a really solid year and not a lot of changes there, but, offense, new look. The roster, like I said, a lot of new names. Jake, I hope you're memorizing that roster to help me out because
I already got it down.
So NC2A, it's the new roster. And I actually tried playing Jack the other day, my son. And there's so many buttons. And I actually did okay I played a half. We played a championship. He was Colorado. I was like, what the hell? Why are you Colorado? But I actually did okay. But it was super fun to see, Nico Taylor. And I don't know. There was some, brand new faces. So it'll be fun to go over that.
It's fun to hear the players upset about their ratings.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm faster than that. I'm faster than that. Yeah.
And that's nothing different than what Jake and I deal with covering recruiting. They're telling us that as high school kids. Like, what do you mean I'm only a 86 3-star? I run a faster 440 than that. And you're like, well, you didn't when it was actually counting. So just do it on the field. Okay, so let's jump in and talk roster overview. There's lots of departures, lots of new faces since the end of last season. I think it's kind of good to do a big overview of some of those new faces. Revamped, let's just start with the offensive line. Those big fellas up front. Revamped O-line. Jake, you want to talk to us a little bit about who's there and who you're excited about?
Yeah, so coming back is obviously Joshua Gray, who is entering his 5th season as a starter, which is pretty crazy to me. That's 5 years as a starter for a upper level program is pretty unheard of, especially on the offensive line. Grant Stark is back as well. Started a handful of games in 2023. He was an all-conference tackle at Nevada in 22. We're thinking he may get bumped out to a tackle position. At this point, there's 3 starting spots set in stone between Gray, Stark, and Wells, a Colorado transfer at center. He had a really strong spring. Really excited about what Van Wells potentially brings to the table. Stark really could fit in at the guard spot or either tackle. Josh Gray, who has spent the first 4 seasons of his Oregon State career at left tackle, is bumping inside to left guard. So that'll be a change that Gray is definitely up to that challenge. And then
and let me just interrupt you there. The reason for that change is because that is what NFL scouts project him. They actually project him as a center or guard in the NFL. So that is where they want to see him play.
Yeah. And then there's 2 spots left and there's a handful of guys. You've got a couple returning sophomores in Nathan Elu, who can play tackle or guard, Jacob Strand, who's exclusively a tackle, and Huka Vihincic, who missed all the spring. And at this point, his availability is unclear heading into the start of fall camp the next week. And then a pair of seniors in Flavio Gonzalez, who can play tackle and guard, and then Tank Lichtenhan, a 6'10" transfer from Colorado, who is probably considered the front runner to start at the right tackle spot. But really, there's going to be a lot of eyes on this offensive line competition for those final two spots.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Ty? I mean, who do you think then, are the two tackle spots from what you saw this spring?
Yeah, it's so interesting just because we haven't seen Lichtenhan pads, like what's he showing up like? Obviously he's been here all summer. Have you guys heard? I mean, I don't know. Have you heard it?
I have not heard, but we saw him at the spring game and he's a beast.
Yeah, sure.
But I have not heard what he came in measurements and all of that.
Remind me, was he coming off an injury?
No, he just had to finish his degree. He finished, okay. I believe he had to finish his degree at Colorado.
So it wasn't injury related why he missed spring. It was academic. Okay.
Yeah, he just.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, they would prefer to have Stark inside. Is that?
Yeah, that's kind of what they've been. That's kind of what Coach DeVan wants, but he wants his 5 best offensive linemen out there. So there is a possibility that Stark at tackle with, say, like a Volton, Vincic, Elu at guard is a better 5 than Stark at guard with Strand and Tank at tackle. So I would imagine we're going to see a ton of rotating, especially the first 2 weeks. The 5 that were out there practicing during the spring was different pretty much every practice outside of Van Wells at center. So that'll be pretty interesting to track, how DeVan does those rotations.
Yeah, and the early returns on Strand is that he got great reps at Oregon. He got great reps in the bowl game, and he's really kind of played himself into that conversation for one of those tackles.
Yeah, and I mean, Strand's a guy that the previous staff raved about. He was a favorite of Coach M, and Coach M has a pretty good reputation at identifying and developing talent. So Strand is a guy who could pop this season.
I think you got to be excited about Wells at center, just because how well he performed on Pro Football Focus, which doesn't tell the entire story, but certainly is immeasurable. And then but I wonder too, just because Colorado ran the ball less often, that it was really well thought of as a pass blocker, but less mentioned his, less highlighted as a run blocker. I wonder why that is, I mean, it did seem like they let Sanders, drop back and try and survive as long as he could to let that athleticism find a hole,
Well, that's what I've heard. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think, and some Beaver fans were questioning going after Colorado O-linemen because they didn't grade out that well. But when you actually sit and look, a lot of that wasn't on them. It was because Sanders was back there improvising and taking forever. So nobody's going to block that long.
Yeah. I also don't think Colorado's offense was necessarily schemed with the best interest of the offensive line in mind. I feel like it was more designed for a Shedeur Sanders, a Travis Hunter to put up, big time stats. And I think being with Coach Anderson and for Tank and Wells being back with Kyle DeVan, who coached them in 2022, I feel like that'll be very beneficial to their grades or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and not to keep talking about Colorado, because I'm sure I'm not alone in that I'm sick of talking about Colorado. But one of the coordinators got let go, right? Was that I can't remember.
He got demoted during the season, and he ended up taking the San Diego State head coaching job.
Okay.
And in my mind, the offense was much worse without Sean Lewis as the offensive coordinator.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to move because if we spend 10 minutes on each position, this podcast is going to go into next week. So I'm going to put the probably the biggest elephant in the room. We're going to put that one last on the offense. Let's talk running backs. Oregon State lost star running back Damian Martinez this offseason, who transferred via the portal after the first 2-week period of spring ball to Miami. But we saw a lot of Anthony Hankerson and a lot of Jam Griffin. Give me your thoughts there on the running back room.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest question is who steps up behind Jam and Anthony. I mean, at this point, it feels pretty established that Griffin and Hankerson are going to get the majority of Oregon State's carries. But, is Jake Reichel number 3? Is it one of Oregon State's true freshmen, Cornell Hatcher, or Salahuddin? All of that stepped up. And, I mean, Oregon State's had freshmen contribute. Jamar Jefferson in 2018, Damian in 2022.
Quiz Rogers,
those guys,
Ken
Quiz
Simonson,
going back even farther. Quiz,
yeah.
Didn't Storm Woods get reps too?
He redshirted, but he did start as a redshirt freshman.
Yeah.
Overall, I'm really excited about his group. I think Cornell Hatcher in particular was a guy that was really under recruited. I mean, he ran for over 2,000 yards and 40 touchdowns playing in the toughest conference in my mind, the country for high school football. Really excited about what Cornell Hatcher can bring to the table. And Anthony Hankerson, in my opinion, is Oregon State's preseason, pick to click or click to pick. I think he's gonna have a huge season.
Guys, you just hope they stay healthy and they walk into game 1 healthy, because I think that they'll probably manage their carries and stuff, because I mean I think it is even losing Damian Martinez. I think it's a pretty rich room in that you've got. I mean, I thought Jam Griffin was so dynamic in 22, and I think that it lends itself to what it seems like Gundy wants to do with offense. So
Gundy wants to throw the ball. He wants to at least have guys that can catch the ball. That was Damian's probably his biggest Achilles heel, is receiving. Yeah. So I mean, Jam and Hankerson can both do it, and I'm with Jake. I actually think one of those freshman running backs steps up, and we see them play. They see reps this year. The most veteran group possibly in the whole offense is the wide receiver group, but a lot of new faces. We were told Jimmy Valston won't be seeing fall camp, but potentially will be seeing in the season. He has potential to be a star. Jeremiah Noga, and then the additions with Darius Clemens. There's some new names. I'll let Jake dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely in terms of veteran guys, seniors, juniors, or is it actually 0 senior receivers? There's a whole lot of guys that have been with the program for a while. Thing is, they haven't really played a whole ton. Trayshawn Harrison's, Tyjon Lindsey, Anthony Gould, Josiah Irish, and Silas, all those guys have taken the majority of Oregon State snaps at the receiver spot over the past 5 seasons. And guys like Trent Walker, Jeremiah Noga that have been in the program are going to have to step up and take a big-time role. I'm really excited about what Clemens brings to the table. We didn't see him at all during the spring, but I've heard he will be 100% and ready to go come next week. And I'm pretty excited about the 4 redshirt freshmen and the 3 incoming freshmen. I think Oregon State's done a fantastic job recruiting the wide out spot over the past 2 classes, and David Wells is a guy that could push to start. Zachary Card's been a star in practice, and then you got 2 really talented true freshmen in Jordan Anderson, and a guy who I would really keep an eye on is Malachi Durant. I think he was just a steal, and he's a guy who could step in and contribute from day one.
Mm-hmm. Ty, what are your thoughts on that wide receiver room?
I was really impressed by Trent Walker. I mean, I don't know. I've never played the wide receiver position, never coached it, not even at the high school level. But I always value a tough guy. Like you look at those great possession receivers like the Mulaney's, the Adenijis, and I'm dating myself, but like those guys that were tough route runners that were just like black holes. They just came down with the ball. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think that we're, and I know we're talking about this later, but I think that we're going to go through some growth at quarterback. So I think having those guys that are tough, you know what I mean? That are competitive and tough. I almost feel like that's almost like a paramount rather than the guy that's maybe the game breaker that's 50-50 catching the ball.
Yeah. The Oregon State's going to need those guys. I'm going to date myself even more. Brandon Powers comes to mind when you think of total risk, possession receiver. But I agree. I think that's going to be, especially early in the season, it's going to, the running game and getting the ball to some guys that are going to, are going to catch that ball. Are going to be huge.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about quarterback. Ben Gulbranson is back. And then 2 transfers in Jabari Johnson, Giovanni McCoy are there. We missed Giovanni. Jabari. See, this is going to really mess me up. Johnson was out with a broken foot the first half of spring camp. Came back the second half, was limited. Giovanni McCoy came from Idaho, where he was super, super productive, but we didn't see a lot from him this spring. Guys, who, in your opinion, is day one starter versus Idaho State? Or is it too early to tell?
I do think it's too early to tell, but if I had to take a guess, I would go ahead and say Giovanni McCoy. I feel like he gives Oregon State the best chance to win now. I do feel like Jabari is the most talented, and while we only got a glimpse of him, he did appear to throw the best ball. But again, Giovanni's got the starting experience that Jabari's yet to take a snap in a Division I game. I wouldn't count out Ben Gulbranson as well. He's a steady guy who Oregon State has shown the ability to win games with. While Ben won't necessarily win you any games based off his talents, he's a game manager. He does what is needed to be done. And while I would lean Giovanni McCoy, at this point, I'd say it's anyone's game, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Jabari Johnson start on August.
I was impressed with Jabari, what we saw of him late in spring.
Yeah.
And then, it's tough to tell because, we haven't seen these guys throw in 3 months, and these guys are throwing with their tight ends and receivers at least 2 to 3 times a week, and that development could be taken by Jabari. It could have been taken by Giovanni. Ben could have had a hell of an offseason and taken a big step forward. So
do you think it's just a chemistry thing?
I do feel like it is. I played receiver, and the quarterbacks and receivers, they have to gel. My high school football coach played 15 years as a quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals, the Falcons, the Broncos. One phrase he preached to every quarterback was KYP, know your personnel. And what that comes from is just repetition from, Giovanni McCoy throwing to Trent Walker, or Jabari Johnson throwing to David Wells, or Ben Gulbranson throwing to Jalen Holmes. It just takes time, and that's where I think the offseason workouts are so crucial. It's because these quarterbacks gel and know how the receivers run certain routes.
Yeah, now did you play quarterback, Ty?
Yeah, for a two-way school, I don't know that I went to the Peyton Passing Academy or anything, but I do think you bring up a great point, Jake. I think also too, just to piggyback off that, is trust, and that's built in time in a system that is built to where a quarterback gets a little jittery or wants to put the ball down and run, just having faith in the system to where you can stay in, you have a little bit more faith, you can stay in just a little bit longer, stay in that pocket, keep your eyes down the field, don't get anxious, and I think that's built with what you said, with that relationship and that chemistry with the receivers, with the relationship with the offensive line, knowing your personnel, and even something that I don't profess to be any kind of quarterback guru, but I do think that's palpable, And yeah, I just what you just said, Jake, too. I gotta agree that I think the ball coming out of Jabari's hands was impressive. In the same way you would see DJ when DJ would set his feet and throw, or sometimes not even set his feet. That guy's got a unique amount of arm strength. But so getting him comfortable and getting those mechanics down, and working through that offense like Coach Gunderson intends to, I think that's all factors. This might be an unpopular opinion, and I don't mean to be contrary, but I would not be surprised if Ben Gulbranson is your starter game one. And I would have to agree that the ceiling there may be different with those other two quarterbacks. And I have it written down. Our first bye is after Purdue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, week 5.
That we could very well see a quarterback change then. But I think with Ben, like you see a guy that's not particularly turnover prone. I don't think he's regressed since I don't think he's regressed. And what you got was a guy that maybe didn't showcase a lot of ability to get the ball down the field, but didn't throw a lot of picks. At times we may have been frustrated with the passing game, but I mean, just to kind of pull this together with the offensive line and the running back, I'm hopeful, again, not an offensive coordinator, but I'm hopeful that we run the ball, that we run the ball and then we put those quarterbacks in a position to make the throws that get them comfortable and slow the game down for them a little bit. And then, I think you could really be talking about maybe a different quarterback come by the time that you're playing. Who's after Purdue? By the time you're playing Nevada or Colorado State.
Colorado State.
Yeah.
So, Squeaky Clean in the comments just said, if the QB battle is super close, I'd probably start Jabari because even if there's growing pains as a freshman, he'll have valuable experience.
I mean, I feel like another aspect of Jabari's game that we didn't necessarily see in the spring is Jabari is, in my mind, he's the best running threat out of the three. I mean, he was a dynamic threat scrambling in high school, and while we didn't really see a lot of that in the spring as he was recovering from the foot, Brian Gunderson's offenses in the past have seen athletic quarterbacks that can run. I mean, he had Dorian Thompson-Robinson for 3 or 4 seasons at UCLA, and he was one of the top running quarterbacks the Pac-12 had seen. So if Jabari can show that ability that he showed it on his tape in high school, that could be another thing that kind of edges things in favor of Johnson, whereas Gulbranson doesn't possess that. Giovanni McCoy does a little bit, but not nearly to the same length as Jabari Johnson does.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'm going with the Jabari has just such a high ceiling.
Sure.
I just think, but we'll see, because I think this will be a better conversation that we will have in a couple weeks once
Sure.
we've seen some development. But it is something. I think this is what Beaver Nation is talking about right now: is who's going to be the quarterback. Quickly, we'll talk tight ends. This tight end position scares me a bit. There's not a lot of depth there.
Very unproven. I mean, outside of Jermaine Terry, there's 3 career catches, I believe. Bryce Caulfield was very good during the spring. He's probably the best pass catching threat. He's more in the mold of Luke Musgrave type of longer, lankier pass catcher than like a Jermaine Terry, where he's just a big guy. Outside of that, Oregon State brought in a transfer from Cal and Andy Alfieri, and he appears slotted to take like an H-back, like Jack Coletto type role potentially.
Cooper Jensen's one to watch too.
Jensen's been banged up, but if he can stay healthy, we've barely seen him practice just because he's been just bit with the injury bug.
That's too bad.
Super high potential though, so fingers crossed Jensen can take a step and stay healthy, because he's, in my mind, outside of Jermaine Terry, he's the second most talented tight end in that room. It's just a matter of staying healthy and putting it on the field.
Bryce Caulfield, I think, is one too, just to watch. I don't maybe think huge numbers, but we did see some catches. Yeah.
I was impressed in the Sun Bowl. I know there wasn't a ton of bright spots, but Jimmy Valson, Caulfield, and the 2 inside backers really kind of caught my eye.
Okay. Do you have anything, Ty, before we move on to defense?
No, I wish I knew more about the tight end position, especially coming off an offense like Coach Lingers and Coach Smith's, and that there was a lot of complexities with it and how we'd use multiple. I wish I knew more about it. His name escapes me. I'm so sorry. Jermaine Terry.
Yeah.
JT.
Yeah. I mean, the guy is clearly an athlete, looks great in pads. He moves well. So it's exciting to see if, who could put it together.
Yeah. He did really well for me. The one half of NC2A that I played.
Nice. Well, then
one
good
half.
enough.
Yeah, they only got banged up, and then anyway,
Yeah.
My one experience playing NC2A. I'm gonna need help. So if any of our viewers like are really good, and maybe I should have Jake help me because he sounds like he's been playing a lot. I need help. Okay, we're gonna move on to defense because I think if there's one area in the team that I think Beaver fans can see as a shining bright spot would be the defense, and I think it starts up front. Jake, you and I've talked about this a little bit. Do you think this defensive line could be the strongest that we've seen at Oregon State in several years?
I feel like it'll be pretty tough to top the last 2 seasons. In my mind, this is the biggest question mark, actually. I mean, I feel like the rotation at the cornerback spot, the linebackers appear to be very strong as well. Outside of Samisi Haluni, Oregon State's interior defensive line doesn't really have anyone that's played as an Oregon State athlete. I mean, you've got young guys with a ton of potential, like Thomas Collins, who has just been a star in practice. Smaller guy, 6'1", about 265, but he's physical. One of the best pass rushing interior defensive players Oregon State's had in quite some time. And then you got 3 transfers between Tavita Pomea, Taiji Hill, and Nick Norris. Either of those 3 could step up and take a spot, as well as Jacob Schuster, who transferred in ahead of last season, couldn't play in 2023 because of transfer regulations. But overall, it looks like it's a talented group, but there hasn't been a ton of separation. You know, this group to me was kind of pretty similar to the offensive line, where there was a ton of rotation. There was very rarely the same 2 players up front at the defensive tackle spots. You know, some days it would be Schuster and Haluni, and then the next day it'd be Collins and Hill, and then it just go back and forth. So excited to see which of these guys step up.
But Colin, do you think he's going to be a guy?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to make a pick to a guy that up front is a star, it would have been Takari Hickle if he didn't get hurt. I think he is a future NFL type pass rusher. But Thomas Collins, I'm not saying he's as good as him, but he reminds me of Aaron Donald. You know, he's a smaller guy, built, and he just gets into the backfield and causes havoc.
What about Kelsey Howard?
Haven't seen a lot of Kelsey. You know, we didn't see a whole ton of him in the fall last year, and then he got hurt, missed all of spring this past year. Saw him.
He had Liz Frank. Was that what his was? His a foot injury? Yeah.
Yep. Saw him walking on campus the other week when I was walking through, and he did not appear to be like limping or anything. So I'm assuming he's ready to go. And you know, Kelsey's a talented kid. Just excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, we have a question. Connor Johnson wants to know about Abraham JoJo Johnson.
Yeah, JoJo's another one. I mean, there's so many guys at that defensive tackle spot. There's 7 or 8 to 9 guys we could possibly see, and Johnson's another talented younger freshman, redshirt freshman that could step in and see some time up front in the trenches.
Ty, what are your thoughts?
Well, I can't remember a time, having followed you and recruiting and the great job you do for so long. I can't remember a time when we had this many bodies on campus in pads. I remember when it seemed like we were taking an offensive lineman and making him a key tackle. Yeah. Or taking a linebacker that put on a little more weight than had anticipated and making him, putting his hand on the ground. So that's what's interesting to me. I mean, last year's defensive line had so much experience in that system and the results were obvious. But it's like, I can't remember time. I mean, there's so much new. Who knows if that translates? But just you had a guy like Quincy Wright that was highly sought after. And best of luck. That seems like a great kid. Like he moved on because you just have a lot of at least for Oregon State, I can't remember a time when we had more bodies on the defensive line. So hopefully, you're
right. I mean, there's been times that it's so thin that they're moving guys or the guy that ate too much and
sure. And that had offers too. I mean, people that had offers from other Power 5 schools and good programs, and
I mean, with Taiji Hill and Tavita Pomea, there's two guys that played for top 10 programs last year too. And I do think you are going to see a ton of rotation. Coach Tuiaki kind of alluded to the fact that you're probably going to see 4 to 6 guys a game at the defensive tackle spot alone. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a ton of guys, and I feel like that depth can be undervalued. I mean, it's something Oregon State hasn't had.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is way off topic, and we'll talk about this another day, but I took my son in for a haircut today, and they were talking to me about football, and they were talking about the Ducks and their unlimited NIL dollars. And I, he's like, they're going to stockpile. And I said, the problem is kids want to play. And so they can go and get these guys, they can get all these defensive linemen, but at the end of the day, at Taiji Hill, they want to play. So they're going to move on where they can actually find playing time. So
absolutely.
It's going to be interesting to see where those guys are, but I think the potential is there for some fun. How about, well, I was going to say linebackers, one of the deepest. I'm super excited about Isaiah Chisholm and Melvin Jordan, but I think DBs are probably the deepest. But talk to me about maybe like our outside linebackers, edge rushers. How's that going to look?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this group took a hit with Takari suffering what sounds like a season-ending injury. He's a guy who was going to, in my mind, break out and be just a star up front.
This was Jake's favorite player, guys.
Last year, too.
Yeah. He just kept saying he's going to be a star.
He killed it. Takari was a guy that flashed against the Mountain West teams in 2023. But I think Oregon State's still in very good hands between Nico Taylor and Olu Omatoshu. Those are two guys that both really stood out and had strong springs. Everywhere Omatoshu's gone, he's been a great pass rusher. He had 6.5 sacks as a freshman in 2022 at Wyoming. Didn't play a whole lot last year, but the 1 or 2 possessions he got on defense, he had a strip sack, which shows the pass rushing ability that he possesses. I'm a little worried about their production in the run game pulling off. I feel like what John Hickart and Corey Stover brought to stopping the run game is kind of overlooked at times, and it'll be interesting to see if they can match that success. And I'm interested to see which guys develop behind them. I mean, Josh Griffiths just came in, a transfer who's played at FSU and Tarleton State. DJ Westlock as well as a guy who was a pretty highly rated recruit. And then a guy who I kind of like is Zakiah Saez. I thought he had a really strong spring. He's a redshirt freshman out of Florida who had a pretty impressive offer list coming out. So I'm excited to see how that depth shakes out behind the pretty clear-cut 2 favorites to start right now.
Yeah. I think there's an opportunity because you do give up, you do lose a lot of experience, right? With those edges, but I don't know, a lot in size too. I think that we're a little bit smaller, but I mean, the hope would be the silver lining would be that we are more athletic. I
mean, McCartan was there like 5-6 years. I mean, that was a lot of snaps to lose graduation.
I mean, between John McCartan, Chatfield, and Stover, two of those guys were on the field for 85-90% of Oregon State snaps last season, and if 2 of them weren't, then one of those 3 was on for pretty much every play. So there's a ton of uncertainty in terms of game production, but what these guys have shown in practice, it is pretty promising.
Then moving to the DB spot, I felt Oregon State went kind of bananas in the transfer portal this offseason with DBs, but we also got the news that Jaden Robinson was coming back, and that just gives such leadership to the whole defense, but really that secondary, but some pretty talented guys. Kobe Singleton is one that I'm kind of highlighting, but Noble Thomas is back, a familiar face. What are your thoughts there? Yeah,
I mean, my biggest question is the safety spot. Oregon State lost Katana Adapu and Achille Arnold. Skylar Thomas looks like he's pretty much cemented to start. He was one of Oregon State's most talented players in 2022, was going to start last year before tearing his ACL. The other spot, though, they've got, in my mind, 5 guys capable of starting. You got Jack Conne, who is probably the most experienced at the safety spot. Tyrese Ivey, who started a handful of games at corner, he's bumping back to safety. You got a talented younger guy in redshirt freshman Harlem Howard, who played in a couple games, and then you have 2 JUCO transfers in Amarian York and a 6'4" Jaheim Patterson. I mean, there's depth, and I feel like there's depth at the cornerback spots too. Like, not only do you have Jaden Robinson and Kobe Singleton, but a guy like Andre Jordan, who as a freshman was guarding Troy Franklin and Roma Dunze in crunch time, and he's a guy who's going to be relegated to a backup role, but he's more than capable of starting. And then you have Exodus Ayers, a true freshman.
I was going to say a true freshman. That's another one to watch.
I like Exodus Ayers a lot. I think he's going to have a hell of a career at Oregon State. I think between Exodus Ayers and Andre Jordan, Oregon State's got their 2 cornerbacks of the future.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, Exodus is he really turns him head. He was here early. Alton Julian, do we know? I mean, is he
still yet to hear
safety?
anything?
Okay.
I mean, we didn't see him at all in the spring. You know, he's just a guy who's, if healthy, is one of the most talented players on the Oregon State team. We just haven't seen it, and this will be the 3rd year since his torn ACL in 21, and he's had 3 surgeries in 3 years. Fingers crossed he gets back to health, but until then, I mean, we really haven't seen him available. So
I think that's a pretty cool story if he does see the field. You know?
Yeah, I mean, and he did play in a handful of games last year before re-injuring himself, and he did play at some inside backer. So
that's why I heard that they were kind of moving him, but he's still listed on the roster as a DB. But
it wouldn't be a shock to see with the updated roster, which will come out the next week, a potential bump inside. But it'll be interesting because there's really a ton of depth, and there's going to be guys that should be playing that aren't. So there's going to be I feel like there might be too many mouths to feed even.
Sure.
Yeah, there's some talent there. Who stood out to you, Ty, during spring?
I don't know, because there's so much rotation, and I was still learning the roster, so it was kind of drinking from a fire hose. So I don't really have a good answer for you there. But was I mistaken? Did Skylar Thomas not participate in the spring game?
He was held out just
precaution.
Just a precautionary.
Just like a guy that's played plenty of football doesn't need to. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. The interesting thing is what you just said, like a little bit of a log jam, and I don't know. I think with people that are new to the roster or transfers, that it might take a year. I mean, look at Olu. You know, I'm not going to try to say his last name, but I mean, look at Olu. You know, I mean, that guy's really playing himself as of the spring into that conversation. Whereas last year, you know, he was a special teams contributor, but sometimes I think it takes a year. You know, and so now you've got, and obviously there's going to be a lot more room. I mean, more at corner than at safety, but you know, you got guys like Exodus Ayers and Andre Johnson, and you know they look ready to slide in, barring injury, God forbid, you know, in 25. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's like I said, they went heavy in the transfer portal and preps this offseason recruiting. So there's a lot of bodies there. We're going to take a quick break. Oh, go ahead.
I think this secondary has the potential to be one of the best in the country, quite frankly. You know, it's just loaded with top-end talent with 2 future NFL corners, and the amount of depth the state has is impressive. So excited to see this group against some talented teams, and, you know, the Ducks and some talented wideouts like Torrey Horton and Ricky White.
I listened to a podcast. I can't remember who it was now, but Kobe Singleton was on it. It was really great.
He's gonna be good.
Yeah, and he was speaking to just the his experience in the program and coming from Liberty. It was really cool to listen to.
The question about Micaiah Tongue. We don't have any injury updates yet until the coaches meet with the media here before camp starts. We won't have any updates. So be in the lodge. We'll be posting that in the lodge as soon as we get that. We have to take a quick break for the podcast side. Just a quick ad break. But if you are not a member of BeaverBlitz.com, now is the time to join. It is a time, probably the busiest time of the year for Jake and team, because we are in-depth practice reports, video interviews, and more. join beaverblitz.com. And also, if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do so now at Beaver Blitz Video. Lots of insight and videos from press conferences and media scrums. Okay. We're going to kind of condense some of this because I was going to get kind of more into the defense offense expectations, but we're going to kind of combine this because we're already at the 40-minute mark and we don't want to go super long today. So let's start with defense. And maybe we've already kind of talked about this a little bit, but Ty, what are your expectations for this defense early and then by the end of the season? Is this a top 10 defense? Are they going to struggle with the run? What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't know how to make that sort of prediction. I think that you hope that the defense allows you, awards you some takeaways. And I hope that they're off the field quickly. I hope that it's and that's where you can get excited about a Kobe Singleton, who is clearly has great on ball defense, who's clearly a ball hawk. I think that's exciting. I don't know. I think that you're gonna hope for a lot of takeaways because that awards an offense and process to get more opportunities. So
yeah, I do think Oregon State's going to need to rely on the strong defense early, until a strong defense until the offense gets their legs up under them.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of diverse offenses too. I mean, from Air Forces to UNLVs.
Yeah,
you're going to see some really diverse offenses, and that on paper they look talented. And having watched them live, not that I have a lot of spring games to compare to, but they look athletic. They look confident. They look like a defense is playing fast. And as you like to say, from the Erickson years, they play with swagger. They're excited out there. And I think that defensive staff has to be credited with that too. How quickly that manifests into really good defense, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that we start the season, and I don't know. I have a lot of respect for this Mountain West schedule, maybe more than other people do. But I think early on, you got some games where it's going to be nice because you maybe aren't playing the toughest games in your schedule at first, but then you run into a buzzsaw in week 3. So, yeah.
Jake, any thoughts? Your expectations?
Yeah, I agree with what you said to a T, Angie. Oregon State's going to rely on this defense to win them games at the start, especially at the start of the season. I don't think if Oregon State needs their offense to win games the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, it's going to be a little rough because what we've seen at this point, especially in the passing game, it's questionable. Like that's not going to beat in Oregon, might not even beat a team like San Diego State or Purdue. So this defense is going to have to go out there and keep the score low enough to where the offense is going to be able to give Oregon State a comfortable margin of victory.
So along those lines, and maybe we don't know enough yet, and I don't like to make this negative, but who in your mind on defense do you want to see step up early this fall camp, this August? Like
in camp or during the season?
During camp, yeah. Who do you need to see early step up and take kind of a step early this fall?
I would like to see one of the interior defensive tackles. A guy that immediately comes to mind just because he's the most experienced is Samisi Haluni. He's a guy this will be his 4th year at Oregon State. He's a guy that's played in every game the past 3 seasons. While he's mostly been a special teams guy, he'd occasionally plug in and play defensive tackle. And I think Oregon State's going to rely on him, especially during the start of the season, as the veteran guy that's really seen the field, where Jacob Schuster hasn't played a whole lot of games. Thomas Collins hasn't. Taiji and Tavita really haven't. So I think Samisi Haluni is a key veteran presence up front that Oregon State is going to have to ride at the start of camp.
Ty, who do you want to see step up?
Those that I gotta agree with Jake, but also I would say just secondarily, the edges, the outside linebackers, how are they going to stop the run? Because they looked like world beaters in the pass rush, athletic. They seem to beat blocks, but But now it's like, okay, you're going to miss the big body John Carden, Corey Stover, who were great run stoppers off the edge. So,
okay, so flip that now. Offense. Who on offense do you need to see step up?
I want to see someone step up in the passing game as a number one target. I think there are three pretty clear candidates. If spring was any indication, I think either David Wells, Trent Walker, or Darius Clemens is going to be Oregon State's top target this season. Obviously, we didn't see Clemens, and Trent Walker was Oregon State's best receiver during the spring. I'd like to see one of those three take that next step forward and really, establish himself as a clear-cut number one.
Okay. Ty? Same kind of thing. I mean,
yeah, same kind of thing for sure. And I don't think it's maybe a step up thing, because I do think you have clearly proven leadership with Josh Gray, who is just one of my favorite Beavers of all time. And you've got Wells, you got Lichtenhand, you've got people that have performed at the Power 5 level on big stages. But I think if you were to, what's my Christmas list? I think that offensive line, because it's just going to make life easier as other parts of that offense find their footing, find their way.
And that's been Oregon State's bread and butter over the past maybe 4 years, was that O-line. That strong O-line play has really helped as the offense.
I think Jake and I talked about it. I always said, and I mean, this is hyperbole, obviously, but I think Mahalchek was our best running back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think not taken away from any of those guys. We had a run of talent there, but Mahalchek was pretty consistent,
Yeah. And he put his best guys out there. They knew what they needed to do.
Yeah,
that does concern me a little bit, because Devan runs an entirely different blocking scheme. So those O-linemen have had to learn an entirely different scheme. So that concerns me. But
I'm here for it though. I'm all in on Coach Devan.
I am too.
It's hard to follow in the footsteps of one of the nation's best O-line coaches, but I'm certainly, as a fan, put my trust in him and excited to see what happens.
Yeah. And we didn't, I had it on the list to talk about the coaching staff, and what I can say, and we'll go into a recruiting one later in the next month, but the job that these guys have done, and I think a lot of it has been because they are Beavers. When you look at Ryan Gunderson, Kyle Devan, Trent Bray, Keith Hayward, and then, AJ Cooper has been at Oregon State. Kafente's been there. Thomas Ford is just dialed in the Northwest. So, it's really paying dividends. Recruiting has not seen a drop off at all. So that's been positive. Okay. Toughest game this season right now on Oregon.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear. Oregon State has one ranked opponent slated in it. So happens to be a top 4 team in the country. So that's going to be a tough battle for sure.
I think we're going to learn a lot at that game.
I do too.
And I think the boys at Boise State and at Air Force are going to be really telling.
Yeah. And that's end of the season. Okay. So finish this sentence. We'll start with Ty. Oregon State has a successful season if.
Oh man, I got dead air. I think just growth. I really do. I kind of, we'll get to our predictions later on. I'm going to get mine to Jake. I see us with a real opportunity to start fast with the schedule, how it is, but then also you got to get better.
Yeah.
And again, I have a lot of respect for some of these Mountain West teams we're playing. I think a lot of people are like, well, we're stepping down in competition clearly, but also they're not pushovers. So
no.
Yeah.
Jake, Oregon State has a successful season if.
I think Oregon State has a successful season if they can get a quarterback to step up and be a consistent option. Defensively, this team appears to be very solid. Granted, we've only seen them in practice. Offensively, the run game appears to be very strong. They just need a quarterback to step up and take that spot. I'm confident enough with the depth Oregon State's got at receiver that one of those guys is going to step up. If not, 2 or 3 of them will. And give whichever quarterback emerges from the competition as the starter a consistent and reliable target. Just a matter of finding that guy that can win Oregon State games.
Yeah.
And in the chat, Connor Johnson says that Oregon State has a successful season if we stay relevant on a national stage. Only chance for realignment to save us from relegation and the end of my sicko fandom. Realignment. Well, that's another whole can of worms. I still feel good that Oregon State by 2026 is somewhere.
I had a thought that, and I know we got to wrap this up. That OSU, Oregon State football, may very well be the most interesting team in Division I football. I mean, you could make that case for what's about to happen to the ACC, but it hasn't happened yet. But also, Washington State retained their coach, and also I've never seen a program with so much new, all the way around, so much new stadium, new staff, a complete roster turnover, no conference. It's just a lot. I find, and in this, I don't think this is homerism or bias. I think Oregon State football is the most interesting. Oh, we lost Jake. I think Oregon State's the most interesting team in the nation right now.
Yeah, they are. I agree. Okay, so we're going to do some questions, but before I do, just what is coming up in the next week? So for all of you guys that have not been following Beaver Blitz and what we do, it's a lot. So, Jake's coming back. Let's get him back on here. There you are.
That's some technical difficulties.
No worries. Okay, so we're just going over what's coming up for the fans that maybe haven't followed Fall Camp and Beaver Blitz. It is crazy busy, tons of content every single day. Camp opens up next Wednesday. We'll have practice reports in the lodge. The good stuff is in the lodge from Ty and Jake. So you'll want to be there. We have videos, video interviews, post-practice kind of analysis videos that we will do. And more. This is the time to be there. Lots of anticipation, lots of discussion. So that is what's coming up next week, starting next week, and it will run all the way up until we start game prep for the first game, Idaho State. Let's do some damn questions though, because we have a ton of questions. We won't get through all of them, but I will save the questions that we can maybe talk about another day. But since we were talking about realignment, Beaver Jim asked if there are circumstances that if OSU, Washington State were to announce their intention to join another conference, the Pac-12 would be required to share remaining proceeds with the conference with the earlier departing schools. I do believe that's the case. That is why Oregon State can't announce anything until like August 2nd of 2026.
I thought it was August 2nd of 25.
Is it 20? Okay, 25.
25.
Okay. So they would have to wait because otherwise, if they announce their intention, then they would have to split it with the other 10.
And I believe that's just Oregon State officially announcing it.
Okay.
Whereas Oregon State and Washington State could still, quote unquote, agree to terms, just nothing becomes official.
Okay.
No, I may be wrong, but that's kind of the way I read into that.
Yeah, there's, like I said, there's some stuff that I don't quite.
Yeah, it's all pretty tricky. It's confusing stuff.
Dixon R88. Do you foresee the staff mixing up uniform colors?
Yeah. I just based off players, what I've heard, they are anticipating it. So I would anticipate it as well. Pretty cool jerseys. I mean, I like the all white.
You like them? See, I liked the cream. I hate
like
white uniforms.
Really? I like the stormtrooper type, like the all white, white helmet, white jersey, the white pants. I think those are pretty clean.
Okay, you're a college kid. Ty, what are your thoughts?
Who cares what I think? Who cares what I think? Who cares what I think? Do recruits like them? Do the players like them? That's all that matters. I'm probably not on the so many stripes bandwagon, but who cares what I think?
They look good. The thing was, it was kind of funny, the reaction, because Oregon State fans, I love you to death, but you get all mad and you get all bent out of shape that there wasn't more, like, it wasn't more change. But then if it was more change, then you would be complaining because we're not the Ducks and we don't want to be flashy. So, some of the most storied programs in the country don't change things up. Penn State, Ohio State, USC, Bama.
Pretty much all of the top schools outside of.
I mean, Oregon likes their costumes.
And how many national championships they have to show for it?
Yeah, exactly. So no, I mean, I'm not. We could bash them all day long, but we won't. So, no, I thought they look. I mean, I'm an old mom, so nobody cares what I think either. But they're Just win football games. That's all I care.
A guy came up to me, a friend of mine came up to me, and he's like a sort of a football fan. He goes, I don't know if you just heard that Herbstreit says that Herbstreit says that he thinks that Oregon State could go all the way. And I was like, what? And I was like, get my phone to look in. He's like, yeah, the Ducks have a chance to do it. I'm like, shut up.
Yeah, shut up.
Get out of here.
Yeah, leave. Okay, so Black Bandit would like to would be very helpful to take a deep dive into Gundy's past offenses before fall starts. We will do that. So that is on the to-do list. We will do kind of, what he's done. I know talking with him, he wants, ideally he wants to score fast and often. So I know there's a lot of thought that he is kind of a dink and dunk down the field. And he's like, no, if I could one pass, touchdown, get off the field and do that consistently all day, he would take it.
I feel like you're going to see a mixture of the Brent Brennan San Jose State passing game, whereas it's, not dink and dunk. It's kind of like intermediate down the field passing routes, mixing with, a Chip Kelly style running game with, the options and the RPOs thrown in there as well.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's what, I'm a little more up tempo. He will add tempo to it as well, but we will do that. We'll kind of break down some of his past offenses, but yeah, it's going to be some Brent Brennan, some Mike Riley, a little bit of Chip Kelly. So you kind of get a hybrid of that. Let's see, another uniform combo. B-Fan 1829, thoughts on uniform. What fave combo? Okay, let's do that one. What's your favorite combo?
I like the all whites.
The whites, okay.
Yeah, I'm
gonna go all black because I like the all black, so it just makes me think of the Fiesta Bowl.
I don't know, man. There's something about the gray. I can't wait to see it on TV or live. It's weird, but I keep finding myself looking for it when they'll do like the promos where they'll show all of them. I'm not saying it's my favorite, but I don't know. The gray's interesting.
It's different.
Yeah.
And then also regarding the 2026 recruiting class, we started off with a bang with our QB commit. Have you heard any other rumblings? We will be diving into 26.
Imagine it's going to be pretty quiet. The staff's focus now, at least the coaching staff's, is 100% locked in on this upcoming season. And then after that, it'll be the portal. And then I think towards the end of January, you'll start to see that focus on 26. But Oregon State does have a fantastic building block in place with 4-star quarterback Deegan Rose. I mean, not only do you love to get a 4-star quarterback, you love for it to be your first commit.
Yeah. Because
the quarterback is usually the best peer recruiter in the heart and soul of each class. And to get not only a quarterback, but one as talented as Rose first,
he can start building the team around him.
Yeah.
The class. Corvallis Country Club, thoughts on messaging from Vegas. Do you think Teresa's happy hour format gave us some much needed good press? Also thoughts on Bray's comments that we are in a good position for playoffs. Okay, honestly, guys, that's what Bray has said all along, that the schedule lines up, that, if you play Oregon third game, hopefully you don't have to show too much of your offense those first 2 weeks. Oregon doesn't have any film on Oregon State's offense. They don't know what the personnel, they don't know what Gundy wants to do. I think they feel that they could spring a trap on the Ducks. You win that game. Now, I'm not saying there's not tough games in there, but you set yourself up with the 2 buys. If you're 11 or 12 wins come November, you're in the talk. I'd have to think.
Yeah. I mean, the schedule does line up, and in the past, when top 5, top 10 teams have come to Oregon State, it hasn't necessarily gone the way that those teams expect it to. Now,
do I think it's going to happen? No. It's a long shot. But
it will be a stretch to make the playoffs, but it is in the realm of possibility. Oregon State just needs a lot of things to go right.
Yeah. And that means, keep the injury bug at bay. And I know Ty's mentioned the injury bug a lot. Staying healthy, that's going to be huge. Growth, like you mentioned, Ty, it's going to be huge. But that's what Trent and that's what the coaches have the players believing. And I don't know, sometimes you get players believing in something and stranger things have happened. When you get a team of 118 to 24-year-olds believing in something, you never know what will happen. So, and I thought Vegas, for what it was, they're in a tough spot. It's the Pac-2. They're not big market teams. So to be able to sandwich there after Big 12 Media Day, before Mountain West Media Day, the media is there, host a different happy hour kind of night. I thought it was decent, but it all comes back to, as Jermaine Gray says, beat everybody, just win.
Mm-hmm.
Al Davis, just win, baby. That's what the Beavs and the Cougars need to do. So, let's see. Jake, here's one for you. 5 Broncos. Are students going to attend games this fall? What's the pulse of the student body?
I mean,
an excuse to drink alcohol and party.
Yeah, I mean, at least from the Greek life perspective, it's an excuse to get up especially with games like the Civil War, it's an excuse to get up at 6:30 and, just go get drunk. So I wouldn't expect any. While I do feel like a lot of it depends on the success of Oregon State has in this season. I mean, I feel like at a lot of places, if a team's struggling, then you won't necessarily see the same show out, I guess, from a student body. But Oregon State's over the past 3 seasons had, in my mind, one of the best student sections in the country. It's filled an hour and a half before kickoff, which if you compare that to how that was, pre-COVID, it was kind of still filling in around the time kickoff started. So, I think students are optimistic. Definitely not as much as they were last year, just due to the amount of hype surrounding the 23 squad. But I would still expect a decent showing from the students.
Dad of 2 Beavs. Who else will be representing the Beavers in the Olympics besides Jade Carey? I went and did some research. So Allie Gibson will be participating in women's basketball for Puerto Rico. Marie Gulich, women's basketball for Germany. Stephen Thompson, men's basketball, Puerto Rico. Jade Carey, obviously, gymnastics. Alina Hagstrom, she'll be representing the USA in rowing. Amar Desi will be representing Canada in wrestling. And then Oregon State coach Nate Engel on the wrestling staff will be one of the staff for Team USA. So there's your Beaver ties for the Olympics that kick off later this week. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions that we are going to have to get to next week. But this one's a good one. Ed MCG. Which assistant coach has the toughest season ahead of them, and which coach do you think will have the most year 1 success?
That's a tough one. Toughest season ahead of them. I'm going to go with John Boyer at tight ends just because of the uncertainty behind Jermaine Terry. I feel like there's a possibility if Terry gets hurt and those younger guys can't step up, then it could be a rough year. So I would have to go with that. And then for the second part of that question, which coach do I think will have the most year 1 success? I'm going to go with Thomas Ford. I think these running backs are going to have a really good season. And then a close second is Coach AJ Cooper, because I think Oregon State's inside backers are going to be really productive this season.
Okay. How about you, Ty? Who's going to have the toughest season?
I think Gundy.
Yeah.
I think Gundy. And I don't think it's going to necessarily be indicative early on. I think that we'll get to see more of what he wants to do as personnel gets more experience in the offense. So
yeah, and as he builds the team around exactly what he's looking for.
Yeah,
but it's a whole new system, and I don't think this group picked up on the offense maybe as quickly as he was hoping this spring.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's the toughest one. Who do you think will have the most successful season?
I think conversely, I think that Coach Hayward's got a chance. Also, he's got experience as a DC, but also he's a pretty dynamic personality. He's alumni. Also, I hope that Coach Bray still has his influence on it, because that started to become as consistent as Mahalachek line, was Bray's defense. So, yeah.
And I think what I do think you'll see too, and this will hopefully carry over, I think, to the whole team, is Bray's energy.
Yeah.
Because he does have a lot. Coach Smith was not a energetic person. He was, and Bray will be emotional, and that can help fire up a team, both offensive and defensive.
Yeah. Remember Kalani Sataki running up and down the sideline?
Yes.
And I mean, I remember that was just like kind of new, because you didn't necessarily see that with the Coach Riley staff too,
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I think that could be maybe the wild card is Coach Bray and his emotion. As long as he can keep it dialed back and not get too emotional. But I mean, I could see Coach Bray wanting to just run out in the field and go make the tackle himself because. Okay, well, if you had a question that we didn't get to, we apologize. We've already run 5 minutes over, but we promise to get to that next time. Again, the start of the 10th season of the Damn Podcast. I will be back again next week with practice reports and all the good stuff. And it'll probably be 2 weeks. We're probably going to give a couple days of spring camp, and then we'll come back around 6th, 7th. Yeah, in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another episode of the Damn Podcast.